Hello, everyone, and welcome to our paper, Benchmarking Human and Automated Prompting in the Segment Anything Model. This is a collaboration with my co-authors Zoe Fowler, Mohammad Al-Taibi, Mohit Shankar, and Ghassan Rajib. The Segment Anything Model, or also SAM, is a promptable segmentation system developed by Facebook. It is capable of zero-shot generalization to a number of unfamiliar objects and domains without the need for additional training images. It receives multiple modalities of prompts, including points, bounding boxes, and natural language text. As an example, here you can see a seismic image with its corresponding ground truth for a different number of seismic layers. And this image can be prompted in many different ways, with single prompts, either for exclusion or inclusion, with bounding boxes, or a combination of these prompts. As you can imagine, this allows for a wide flexibility of the model in the way we can prompt it. This flexibility allows for the concept of reprompting, essentially to fine-tune the response of the model. We developed a reprompting tool built on SAM, in which a user sees an input image and produces a number of prompts, and then looks at the output segmentation mask produced by SAM, comparing it to the target segmentation mask. If the user is not satisfied with the current segmentation mask, then they can add either inclusion or exclusion prompts and re-observe the result of SAM. They can continue through this process in an iterative way until they are satisfied with the result. Here you can see an example of reprompting in general. Reprompting allows to fine-tune a response without the need to retrain the model. We can see here how reprompting can allow also for fine-tuning or for specializing to different areas of the image in different ways. In the first example, the user is prompting the northern part of this seismic image, essentially the upper layers of the Earth's crust, and other seismic bodies that are fine-tuned through specific reprompting strategies. Now, the fact that reprompting strategies are a possibility also allows for a large degree of versatility in the way that one prompts, which begs the question, what makes a prompt good and what makes a prompt bad? Here we can see three example images, essentially a dolphin, a bird, and a cat. And through different prompting strategies, we could get resulting masks through SAM, like the ones on the top right or the ones on the bottom right. Again, the question arises as what makes a given strategy efficient for this particular model? This is a very understudied domain in general in the literature, in which what has usually been done to adapt to a specific domain is to fine-tune the model itself to a particular image domain instead of trying to study how to make the prompting efficient for that domain in particular. To go a little bit deeper into what makes prompts efficient, we can see that the properties of the data also play a significant role in what defines an optimal strategy. For example, in the first row here, we can see two dolphins that we want to segment. And when having multiple objects or multiple instances of the same object, we have observed that images often require dynamic prompting strategies, meaning that as we prompt the second or third object in the image, we may lose information in the others. So we need to dynamically adapt to that such that we get complete masks. Another strategy that's often seen is encasing, which corresponds to surrounding very closely the boundary of a given object with negative or exclusion prompts, which can be very effective in some domains and harmful in others. As we can see here, for this seismic image in the middle row, it is a very effective strategy to encase the image with negative prompts. But in the bottom row, for this polyp medical data set, it is very harmful and produces a very suboptimal mask. With this in mind, we collect point prompt, which is a comprehensive human prompting data set, which covers 16 image data sets across multiple categories and modalities of images. We use natural images from Coco. We use seismic images across two different Earth categories, and we use a number of medical images, such as breast, polyp, and um, skin lesions. This allows us to study the interplay between prompting strategies and SAM segmentation performance. The very high-level overview of our dataset is that we provide our reprompting tool to a given user, and we allow them to prompt with SAM in an iterative fashion until they achieve a result they are satisfied with. Overall, we have 48 annotators and our 16 image datasets, leading to almost 200,000 prompt sets. On the right of this slide, you can see sequential examples of our prompting data. Given this prompting data, we wish to evaluate how can we study what makes a prompt efficient, and we do this through 3 benchmark tasks. The first of which is implementing automated prompting strategies. There are many works in the literature that have tried to automate the prompting, especially the point prompting process in SAM. So we ask ourselves, can we replicate human performance, or how do these automated strategies compare to human performance? In the second benchmarking tasks, we ask what strategies are best or more agreeing with SAM for a fine-tuning approach. Essentially, we fine-tune SAM both to human strategies and to each of the implemented automated strategies to evaluate how performance is improved for each of these. In our last benchmarking task, we ask what makes human prompts good, essentially by trying to identify interpretable features from prompting strategies to try to evaluate how informative these features are for decoding prompting performance. For the first task, we implemented 6 existing strategies in the literature for sampling points, essentially k-medioids, random sampling, Shitomasi, entropy-based sampling, max distance sampling, and saliency, and compared it to human performance in the entire array of data sets that we collected. Here we can see in a very qualitative way for an example image that all of these 6 strategies have a very hard time achieving the same visual quality of segmentation that a human does with 3 simple points. We can see that this pattern is also holding for the entire array of image categories that we have. Overall, humans achieve the best performance in the MIOU sense with respect to all others, all 6 methods implemented, except in the skin method, in which again the difference is very small. But for all the rest of them, we can see that humans perform significantly above the automated strategies. The second question then is, okay, is SAM able to adapt to these strategies by fine-tuning the prompt encoder in SAM to each model corresponding to each of these rows? In this table, we can see that SAM's results are significantly improved by adapting or by fine-tuning on each of these individual strategies. In particular, for the k-medioids strategy, we can see that SAM performance rises significantly, almost up to 66% in the chalk group case. But in many of them, and almost all of them, performance significantly increases. Then the next question that we ask is, what features can we extract to help explain this difference in performance? And we perform this analysis across 2 levels, across the data level and across the prompt level. For the data level, we try to define features that describe the image or the object of interest independent of the prompting strategy used. For this, we use object size, object density, whether the object is merged or split, and GCLM features. For example, object size, we can see here, corresponds to simply how much of the image is covered or occupied by the object that we wish for. For example, on the left, you can see the cat occupies a very small percentage of the image, while on the right, the cat occupies almost the entire image. Things like objects density correspond to how many objects there are in the image versus merged and split corresponds to when there are multiple objects in the same image, whether they correspond to a single binary object or whether they are separated in different positions in the image. The prompt level features, on the other hand, describe how prompt points are generated by annotators and are meant to provide us with a way of characterizing different annotation strategies. They correspond to coverage, efficiency, spread, distance, and margin. For example, here we can see exclusion margin corresponds to the distance, the average distance that an exclusion point has with respect to the object boundary. The same principle applies also to inclusion margin. Prompt coverage, on the other hand, corresponds to how much of the image is covered um, with inclusion points, or how much of the object is covered with inclusion points. And efficiency is the exact same concept, but accounting for how many points are being used. Now, we use these features to try to understand segmentation performance. The way we do this first is to evaluate the correlation at the individual level between each feature and segmentation performance for a given data set. In this plot, essentially, the color blue corresponds to a very high positive correlation, and the color red corresponds to a very high negative correlation. The vertical axis corresponds to all of our features, both data level and prompt level, and the horizontal axis corresponds to our 16 image datasets. We can analyze this plot both in terms of the features and in terms of the dataset. To analyze it in terms of the features, for example, we can look at data level features like contrast and similarity and see that they are very negatively correlated with prompting performance. This essentially means that objects with a lot of texture or a high level of contrast will usually be hard to prompt for the model. On the other hand, on the prompt level features, we can see, for example, that prompt coverage, essentially being able to cover a large amount of the image or the object of interest with inclusion prompts, will usually be very positively correlated with the prompting performance, but also inclusion efficiency, meaning we have to try to cover most of the object as possible with as few prompts as possible in order to get a good performance. We can also do this through the dataset level, and we can, for instance, look at the seismic data here, which are salt dome and chalk group, which correspond to two specific geological bodies, and we can evaluate which individual features are correlated with performance for this dataset. For instance, we can see that here, exclusion margin and inclusion and exclusion distance are very heavily correlated, very heavily negatively correlated with performance, essentially meaning that if the margin of the exclusion points is high, meaning the exclusion points are far away from the object we want, performance will be very bad. And if the margin is low, meaning the exclusion points are very tightly surrounding the object of interest, performance will be good. We can also perform this analysis from a more global sense by looking at the entire set of features. Here, what we do is we try to do either linear regression in the top row or quadratic regression in the bottom row to try to estimate performance using the entire set of features, not a single individual feature this time. And we can see that in general, when using either data features alone, which is the first image for both rows, or prompt features alone, which is the second image for both rows, performance is good, but not optimal. But when using both the data features and the prompt features combined, in many cases, we get above 0.5 R2 score prediction for decoding performance. This essentially tells us that the features, both at the data level and at the prompt level, are informative in a cohesive way of how good a given strategy is. I want to focus on the last image here, which is using all the features through a simple quadratic regression. And we can see that particularly the data sets that are out of distribution, meaning the medical data sets here, polyp, skin, and breast, and the seismic data sets here, salt dome and chalk group, are those in which the features are the most predictive of prompting performance, which is precisely the ones in which we need them to be predictive, because those are the ones in which SAM tends to require more specialized strategies in order to get a good segmentation performance. Here, to see a qualitative example, we can see that, as we mentioned before, two of the most important variables for prompting solve terms are exclusion margin and inclusion spread, which are both negatively correlated with this particular data set. We can see that when these variables are high, here meaning that the exclusion margin is high, you can see the points are farther away from the object, and inclusion spread being high means essentially that the inclusion points cover a large amount of the object, or the maximal distance between the two farthest set of inclusion points is large. You can see that the mask resulting is significantly suboptimal. But when these two variables are low, meaning a tight exclusion margin and a very low inclusion spread, we get a mask that is very close to the ground truth. In conclusion, PointPrompt provides a very comprehensive collection of prompting data, and our benchmark task shows that human segmentation is approximately 29% above automated prompting strategies, that fine-tuning SAM using the prompt encoder is a very effective way to adapt SAM to individual point sampling strategies, and that using simple and interpretable features can be predictive of prompting performance in out-of-distribution domains, such as seismic or medical domains, which achieves an RT score above 0.5 and can therefore be used to guide effective prompt strategy design. Thank you for listening to our talk, and you can access both the data and the code associated to our results in these QR links.